بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So, as is our habit, every time we start the Muslim class, the first thing that we always ask is about the author. So what is the author's name? Muslim, alhamdulillah. We're starting to, you guys are getting a little bit quicker with the responses. Muslim, what was his father's name? Hajjaj, and his grandfather's? Muslim, right? Muslim ibn Hajjaj ibn Muslim al-Naysabur, right? And Naysabur is the place where he was born and where he passed, and his family name was what? This one, see, I have to add a little bit every week. Qushayri, Qushayri and Naysaburi. Now that's important because that goes back to a lot of discussions on whether Imam Muslim was a what or a what. Whether he was Ajami or whether he was Arabi. Most of the Muhaddithin, they say that Imam Muslim was what? Arabi, right? So most of them, they said he was Arabi, and some of them, they say that he was Ajami. So the next section that Imam Muslim talks about, and we're still in his Muqaddimah, right? We're still in Imam Muslim's introduction, and he's talking about some of the rules of the Muhaddithin. Over here, when we say that Imam Muslim was an Imam, what do we mean by that? When we say Imam, what does that mean? Yes?
That his opinions carry weight.
Alright, not just his opinions carry weight. So his opinions carry weight in light of the other scholars of Hadith. So if we look at Imam Muslim versus later day scholars of Hadith, whose opinion would we give more weight? Imam Muslim. Not only was he an Imam in Hadith, and even in Hadith there are different sciences. And we said that Imam Muslim, is this the only work that he wrote? The Sahih? No. He has books on what? What else does he, what are some other things that he talks about? Some of his other works. He talks about narrators, he talks about unique narrations, and he talks about these in his Sahih. So we had mentioned that he has Asma al-Kuna, right? So where he talks about people's names and their nicknames. He has the book Al-Wahdan, where he talks about those unique narrations. We said that he has books not only on narrators, but on the texts themselves, where he has a book on Al-Ifrad, where you have these unique narrations. And then obviously he has here his Sahih. Imam Muslim, one of his most famous teachers was Imam Bukhari. When did he meet Imam Bukhari? After he had finished writing his Sahih. But so from the time he met Imam Bukhari, he met Imam Bukhari at 250. Right? He met Imam Bukhari 250 when Imam Bukhari came to Naysabur. And he studied with Imam Bukhari for 5 years. So Imam Bukhari, he stayed in Naysabur for 5 years. So he studied with him for 5 years, and then Imam Bukhari, he left. How much longer after that Imam Bukhari died? Do you guys know? So he died 256. So if he met him in 250 and he studied with him for 5 years, Imam Bukhari went for 1 year, and then after that, rahimahullah, he passed away. Imam Muslim, he went on to live for another, how long? So Imam Bukhari, he died 256. Imam Muslim, when did he die? Do you guys know? 261, right? So he died 261. So about 5 years after Imam Bukhari died, Imam Muslim died. Meaning, in that 11-year time span, Imam Muslim was still actively narrating his book to his students, and it was something that was being recorded. So here, he didn't change his book, right? He didn't change his book. There's a narration in Hadith Sari that Imam Ibn Hajar, he brings, talking about one of the ilal of a particular hadith, or a defect in the hadith, which is the hadith of Kafarat al-Majlis, and there was a illah or a defect in the hadith that Imam Bukhari knew about that Imam Muslim did not know about. That hadith in and of itself is not mentioned here in his Sahih, but it is something, again, that it shows that Imam Muslim was still actively learning from him. And even though he didn't make major changes to the narrations, if he had wanted to make changes of certain ideas in his book, did he have the opportunity to do that or no? Yes, he did. He absolutely did. And Imam Bukhari was not the only person that was aware of Imam Muslim's book. And this is a point that I'm making, and I will get to, because there's an issue here. There's a hadithi issue that Imam Muslim brings up, and he talks about that is going to be very different than maybe some of you have been taught. Yes, question? Oh, when did he finish writing it? He finished writing it probably around the time that he met Imam Bukhari. So I would imagine like 250 or so, and then it was the same year that he managed to meet, or he had the opportunity to meet Imam Bukhari. قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى, and this is من التبويب إمام النووي, باب ما تصح رواية الرواة بعضهم من بعض والتنبيه على غلط في ذلك. ومن ذهب في علم هذا المذهب وسلك هذا الطريق فلا نصيب له فيه. So those individuals who have went on to seek this knowledge and those who have went on to study hadith, then وكان بأن يسمى جاهلا أولى من أن ينصب إلى العلم. So for those individuals who have not gone this path, then it is better, or it is more appropriate to call them ignorant than to actually ascribe them to knowledge. وقد تكلم بعد منتحل الحديث من أهل عصرنا في تصحيح الأسانيد وتسقيمها بقول. So he said, and there are some people who are trying to ascribe themselves to the scholars of hadith, and they're starting to talk about some of these asanid. They're starting to talk about some of these chains, saying that some of these chains are sound and some of them are weak. لو ضربنا عن حكايته وذكر فساده صفحا لكان رأي متينا ومذهبا صحيحا. And these individuals, they don't understand that the way, or the proper way of dealing with these hadith, there is a manhaj, there is a methodology, and it is something that is very well understood amongst the scholars of hadith. إذ الإعراض عن القول المنطرح أحرى لأماتته وإخمال ذكر قائله. So he said, but it is better for those individuals who think that they have reached this level where they have a depth of understanding, where they feel that this opinion that they're bringing is so weighty, and this opinion that they're bringing is so important, that it is better that this opinion actually be thrown against the wall, and this opinion be something that be removed, and it should be removed. وأجدر أن لا يكون ذلك تنبيها للجهال عليه, and it's very important that we warn that the ignorant individuals be warned of this mistake. غير أن لما تخوفنا من شرور العواقب واقترار الجهل بمحدثات الأمور. And this is the reason that we mention this, is that because we fear that these ahadith that they're trying to use, and this methodology that they're trying to use, will actually misguide individuals, and it will lead them into innovations. وإسرائهم إلى اتخاذ خطأ المخطئين, and it will lead them to a deviant belief system. والأقوال الساقطة عند العلماء, and it will lead them to many times what should be considered the rejected sayings from the scholars. رأينا الكشف عن فساد قوله, and it was important for us to actually expose this mistake. It was to expose the falseness of these claims. ورد مقال, and to ورد مقالاته بقدر ما يليق بها من رد أجدى على الأنام. So he says that here, that it's important for me to refute the statement enough so that people truly understand why this is such a big problem and why this is such a big issue. وَأَحْمَدُ لِلْآقِبَةِ inshallah, and it is inshallah we hope to see the blessing of this in the next life, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those who are in his companionship in paradise. Ameen. وزعم القائل الذي افتتحنا الكلام على الحكاية. So this individual, he is now claiming, عن قوله, يعني with his statement, والإخبار عن سوء رويته أن كل إسناد لحديث فيه فلان عن فلان, that and in the narrations, every time you have an isnad fihi fulan and fulan, that you have somebody narrating on the authority of. So there are different ways to narrate a hadith, right? So some of those ways to narrate are hadathana, akhbarana, anba'ana. All of these are I heard, it was narrated to me, it was read in front of me, right? These are all the different ways that hadith are narrated. Also, one of the ways that the hadith are narrated is what is mentioned here, on the authority of. The problem with this terminology of an, is it as clear as the first three I had mentioned? Right? So it's possible when this term an is used, is that there are intermediaries that are not mentioned. وقد أحاط العلم بأنهما قد كان في عصر واحد, and that these individuals live in the same time period, that they are contemporaries. وجائز أن يكون الحديث الذي روى الراوي أمن روى عنه قد سمعه منه وشافه به. And it is possible that these individuals met. And they saw each other and they narrated from each other. غير أنه لا نعلم له منه سماعا. But it is not established that they actually met. but it is not established that they actually met. وَلَمْ نَجِدْ فِي شَيْءٍ مِنَ الرِّوَايَاتِ أَنَّهُمَا الْتَقَيَا قَطْ. And we don't find in other narrations that they actually met. Meaning that the narrations that we have, they say fulan and fulan, that this person on the authority of this person. And if we look at these two people, we don't find other narrations where he says, I heard, or I sat with him, or it was read to us. Right? Because we said that those are clear. Those are very clear. So in this situation, he's saying that you have this individual. What is he claiming? He's saying that this person who's narrating, he's using an, right? He's using on the authority of, and he's saying that these individuals are contemporaries, but we are not able to prove that they met. We are not able to prove that they met. أو تشافها بحديث أن الحجة لا تقوم عنده بكل خبر جاء هذا المجيء. And he's saying that when a narration comes in this way, then do we use it or do we not use it? He's saying here that it should be used or rejected. It's dubious. He's saying it should be rejected. He's saying that this individual is claiming. Now, it's very important to understand the claim that is being said here by Imam Muslim. Imam Muslim is saying that this individual, this ignorant person, he's making this claim that you have somebody narrating using an. You have somebody narrating using on the authority of, and when this person uses that the two people narrating from each other are what? They're contemporaries, but I'm not able to prove that they actually met, right? And he's saying that this person is claiming that if you can't prove that they met, that this hadith should be what? It should be rejected. لا تقوم عنده بكل خبر جاء هذا المجيء حتى يكون عنده العلم بأنهما قد اجتمعا من دهرها مرة فصاعد. That it has to be established that these individuals met at least one time. أو تشافها بالحديث بينهما, or that he actually heard from him, or you were established that they actually heard from each other. أو يرد خبر فيه بيان اجتماعهما, or you have another narration that shows that these individuals actually sat together. وتلاقيهما, or that they met at some point, مرة من دهرهما, at least one point in their life. فإن لم يكن عنده علم ذلك لم تأتي روايته صحيحة تخبر أن هذا الراوي عن صاحبه قد لقيه مرة. And if you don't have any narrations that prove that they met at least once, وسمع منه شيء, and that he heard from him, لم يكن فيه نقله الخبر عمن روى عنه ذلك. That this خبر will not be taken because of what they narrated one from another. وَالْأَمْرُ كَمَا وَصَفْنَا حُجَّةً. And if it is like this, if it is actually like this, then this is a hujjah. It's a hujjah for or against. وَكَانَ خَبَرْ عِنْدَهُ مَوْقُوفٌ. Right? So he's saying that if you're not able to prove that these two people met, then the hadith is to be rejected, and it is to be taken as mawquf. Mawquf meaning that it is not raised to the level of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. حَتَّى يَرِدْ عَلَيْهِ سَمَاعَهُ مِنْهُ لِشَيْءٍ. Until it is proven that these individuals met, من الحديث قل أو كثر في رواية مثل ما ورد. Whether that be a few number of times or whether it be many times. Sure, no problem. So basically here, Imam Muslim is telling us is that there's this individual who's claiming that in order to take a hadith that has this way of narration on the authority of, the only way that I'm able to verify it or I can accept it is if I can prove that these two people actually met. And he's describing this person as what? He's saying jahil. This is Imam Muslim now. And there's a reason that I preface this discussion with a few things. We understand that Imam Muslim was a Imam. We understand that he sat with Imam Bukhari, right? And he had the opportunity to change any of this if he had wanted to. But he continued narrating this way. And one of the other problems is that this condition that we hear, where is this condition applied? To Bukhari's Sahih. Ishkal. This is a problem. Is it possible that Imam Muslim would leave the dars of Muhammad ibn Yahya al-Dhuhli when he was told that whoever sits with Bukhari, don't sit with me, that he would get up and leave, and he would study with him for another 5 years, and then he would call a Shaykh Jahid. He would allow his book to continue being narrated by calling a Shaykh Jahid? Does that even make sense? نعم مش معقول. باب صحة الاحتجاج الحديث بالمعنى.
These is what people impose on Bukhari's condition rather than Bukhari's methodology.
I'll get to it, inshallah. First, I think it's important for us to understand. He's saying, okay, if this is jahl, what is a sawab? What is the correct way for us to understand this issue, right? Because once we understand the correct way, then we can apply it. We can go back and say, all right, number one, this da'wah that Imam Bukhari, he ishtarat al-liqa, right? Because we hear this a lot. That Imam Bukhari, he put a condition that two narrators had to have met, and that's why Bukhari Sahih is awthaq, right, in a higher standing than Imam Muslim Sahih. Not to say that it isn't. It is. This is something that the Ummah agrees upon. This is all the scholars of Hadith agreed upon. But for that reason, so what? We'll put a question mark there and we'll come back to it, inshallah. So Imam Nawawi, he goes on to say, باب صحة الاحتجاج بالحديث المعنى. وهذا القول يرحمك الله في الطعن في الأسانيد قول المخترع. He said, in this statement about how to deal with chains is an innovation. This is a new statement. مستحدث, new. غير مسبوق صاحبه إليه. That no one has proceeded in this. ولا مساعد له من أهل العلم عليه. And there is no one from the people of knowledge who support this view. Listen, this is very strong wording. Would you agree? وذلك أن القول الشائع المتفق عليه بين الأهل العلم. Now this is very important. That the statement that is agreed upon between Ahl al-Ilm, between the people of knowledge, bil-ikhbar wal-riwayat, qadiman wa hadithan, that all of the old and the new scholars, they all agree on this issue, أن كل رجل ثقة روى عن مثله حديثا وجائز ممكن له لقاؤه والسماع منه لكونهما جميعا كان في عصر واحد وإن لم يأتي في خبر قط أنهما اجتمعا لا تشافها بكلام فالرواية ثابتة. He says here that this is a well-known principle amongst the scholars of hadith that they all agree upon, muttafiq alayh, bil-ikhbar wal-riwayat qadiman hadithan, that whether they be from the old scholars of hadith or the new scholars of hadith, anna kullu rajulun thiqa, that every reliable narrator that narrates on similar to him, meaning that this reliable narrator is narrating on whom? Another reliable narrator. وَجَائِزْ مُمْكِنْ لَهُ لِقَاء, and it is possible that what? That they met. It is possible that they met. This is an important point. وَالسَّمَاعَ مِنْهُ, and it's possible that he heard or met him. لِكَوْنِهِمَا جَمِيعًا كَانَ فِي عَصْرٍ وَاحِدٍ, because they were contemporaries. They lived in the same time period. وَإِن لَمْ يَأْتِي فِي خَبْرٍ قَطْ أَنَّهُمَا أَجْتَمَعَا, even if I don't have proof, like a specific proof that they actually met. وَلَا تَشَافَهَا بِكَلَامٍ, or if he didn't hear him say anything, فَالرِّوَايَةُ ثَابِتَةٌ. Any questions? This is very clear. You assume they met. Why? Because they're both thiqa. Ahsant. So what conditions does he put here? He says that as long as both narrators are thiqa, they're both reliable, and it's possible that they have met. If they use an, if they use on the authority of, we automatically assume what? That they met, and the narration is thabita, that the narration is established. And he will go on, he'll mention a few more points that are important, inshallah. But I want this to يرسخ في أذهانكم, that I want this to really stick into your minds. I want this for something for you guys to remember, because it's a very important point. وَالْحُجَّةُ بِهَا لَازِمَةٌ, and that it is an established proof. إِلَّا أَن يَكُونُ هُنَاكَ دَلَالَةٌ بَيِّنَةٌ أَنَّ هَذَا الرَّاوِي لَمْ يَلْقَى مَنْ رَوَى عَنْهُ أَوْ لَمْ يَسْمَعْ مِنْهُ شَيْءٍ. He says here, he makes an exception. He said the only time that we don't accept such a narration is what? If you can prove that they didn't meet. Right? This is very much the opposite. The first statement, or the qawl mustahdith or mukhtari', he said, what is the condition there? That you need a proof that they met. He's saying here is that no, you need a proof that they didn't meet. Why? Because we assume, due to their honesty, that they did meet. فأما الأمر مبهم على الإمكان الذي فصلنا فالرواية على السماع أبدا. That as long as these conditions have been put forth, then these will forever be accepted. حتى تكون الدلالة التي بينا, until these proofs are, when these proofs are put forth, then the riwayat or the narrations are to be accepted. فيقال المخترع هذا القول الذي وصفنا مقالته. So it is said to this individual who has come up with the statement, للذاب عنه وصفنا مقالته أو للذاب عنه قد أعطيت في جملة قولك أن خبر الواحد ثقة أن الواحد ثقة حجة يلزم به العمل. That you respond to him saying that, listen, if you have two narrators that are narrating from each other and they're both reliable, then you are obligated to act upon this hadith. ثم أدخلت في الشرط بعد, and then you added a condition on top of this. You've added a condition on top of this. فقلت حتى نعلم أنهما قد كان التقيا مرة فصاعد. That you, in this condition you added, is that you need to prove that these two individuals met, أو سمع منه شيء, or that they heard from each other. فهل تجد هذا الشرط الذي اشترطته أن أحد يلزم قول. He said, do you find this condition amongst anyone? Is this condition found amongst anyone? وإلا فهلم دليلا على ما زعمت. And he said, and if you don't have a single scholar that holds this position, then your position and your opinion is rejected. فإن ادعى قول أحد من علماء السلف بما زعم من إدخال الشريطة في تثبيت الخبر طولب منه. And if he claims that yes, there is, so someone actually has this condition, so he is to be asked, like, okay, bring your condition, or bring the scholar. ولن يجد هو ولا غيره إلى إيجاده سبيلا. And he will not find them. He will not find them at all. وإن هو ادعى فيما زعم دليلا يحتج به قيل له. And if he still makes this claim, then it is said to him, وما ذاك الدليل? What is your proof? What is your proof for this? وإن قال قلت له, and if it is said قلته لأني وجدت رواة الأخبار قديما وحديثا يروي أحدهم من الآخر الحديث ولما يعاني ولا سمع منه شيئا قط فلما رأيتهم استجازوا رواية الحديث بينهم هكذا على الإرسال من غير سماع والمرسل من الروايات في أصل قولنا وقول أهل العلم بالأخبار ليس بحجة. So over here he's saying that, oh well, when you narrate like this, there's actually a break in the chain. He's saying when you narrate in this way, because there's a chance that these individuals didn't actually meet, because you're not proving that they met, then this is going to be considered muqaddam. It's going to be considered a broken chain. لما وصفت من العلة إلى البحث عن السماع راوي كل خبر عن راويه. He says, and if this is the case, you're going to have to research every single rawi, every single narrator in the same way. فإذا أنا حجبت على سماعه منه لأدنى شيء ثبت عنه عندي بذلك جميع ما يروي عنه بعد. He says, but if I'm able to prove, as long as I'm able to prove that they met once, I can take every other narration from them. فإن غرب عني معرفة ذلك أوقفت الخبر ولم يكن عندي موضع حجة لإمكان إرسال فيه. But if I don't find that, if I don't even find one situation where they have met from each other, then I would consider this hadith to be mursal, I would consider this hadith to be munqati', I would consider this chain to be broken, and I would not accept it. Now this is the one who's making the claim, right? فيقال له, so it is said to him, فإن كانت العلة في تضعيفك الخبر وتركك الاحتجاج به إمكان الإرسال فيه لزمك أن لا تثبت إسنادا معنعنا حتى ترى في السماع من أوله إلى آخره. He says, so are you saying that this defect is going to be found in this chain? This defect is found in this chain, and you have made it weak. You have made it weak because of this possibility of a break in the chain. Right? Because these scholars, they did mu'anana, because they narrated on the authority of. Is this something that you're going to look for from the beginning to the end of the chain? وذلك أن الحديث الوارد علينا بإسناد هشام بن عروة عن أبيه عن عائشة فبيقين نعلم أن هشاما قد سمع من أبيه وأن أباه قد سمع من عائشة كما نعلم أن عائشة قد سمعت من النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said, if that is the case, what do you do with this hadith? He says, I have a hadith here. I have a hadith of Hisham ibn Urwa on the authority of his father, using this terminology, on the authority of Aisha. فَبِيَقِينَ, and we know for surety, نَعْلَمْ أَنَّ هِشَامٍ قَدْ سَمِعَ مِنْ أَبِيهِ. We know that he heard from his father. For sure, he heard from his father. وَأَنَّ أَبَاهُ قَدْ سَمِعَ مِنْ عَائشَةٍ, and we know that his father heard from Aisha رضي الله عنها. كَمَا نَعْلَمْ, just as we know that Aisha heard from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. وقد يجوز إذا لم يقل هشام في رواية يرويها عن أبيه سمعت أو أخبرني. And it was very easy for Hisham, instead of saying on the authority of, to say I heard or it was told to me. أن يكون بينه وبين أبيه في تلك الرواية إنسان آخر. And it is possible that between him and his father that there was another person. أخبره بها عن أبيه, and he told him that because he was an intermediary, so he heard it from this person heard it from his father, and then Hisham heard it from this person. ولم يسمعه من أبيه, and even though he very clearly, according to you, it is possible he didn't hear it from his father. لما أحب أن يرويها مرسلا ولا يسندها إلى من سمعه منه, because he didn't want to attribute this narration to the intermediary. وكما يمكن ذلك في هشام عن أبيه, and just like this is possible between Hisham and his father, فهو أيضا ممكن في أبيه عن عائشة, and it is also possible between his father and عائشة. وكذلك كل إسناد لحديث ليس فيه ذكر سماع بعضها من بعض. And he said, and if this is the case, you can apply this to every single hadith. If you start coming up with these possibilities, you're going to have to remove hundreds of asanid. وإن كان قد عرف في الجملة أن كل واحد منهم قد سمع من صاحبه سماعا كثيرا, and if you know for sure that there are a number of hadith that they heard from them, that they had a number of hadith that they heard from each other, فجائز لكل واحد منهم أن ينزل في بعض رواياته فيسمع من غيره عنه بعد حديثه. So it's possible that some of those hadith he didn't hear directly from him. ثم يرسل عنه أحيانا, and it is possible that he removes that intermediary sometimes. ولا يسمى من سمع منه, and once he removes that intermediary, you don't know who the person is in the middle who he's narrating from. وينشط أحيانا فيسمى الذي حمل عنه الحديث ويترك الإرسال, and sometimes he will mention who that intermediary is. وما قلنا من هذا الموجود في الحديث مستفيض من فعل ثقات المحدثين وأئمة أهل العلم. And he says that this example that we're giving is present in many well-known hadith. What we're saying is present in many well-known hadith, and this is something that not just everybody does, but thiqat al-muhaddithin, those reliable scholars of hadith, are the ones who are actually practicing this. وسنذكر من رواياتهم على الجهة التي ذكرنا عدد يستدل بها على أكثر منها إن شاء الله تعالى. And he said, I'm going to mention more examples of this. To prove the point that I'm trying to make. فمن ذلك, and from that, أن أيوب السختياني وابن مبارك ووكيعا وابن نمير وجماعة غيرهم رووا عن هشام ابن عروة, that this group of scholars, أيوب السختياني, Ibn Mubarak, Wakiya, Ibn Numair, and other than them, all of them narrated on the authority of Hisham ibn Urwa. They used an. They used an. An Abihi, on the authority of his father, an Aisha, on the authority of Aisha radiallahu anha. قالت كنت أطيب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لحله ولحرمه بأطيب ما أجد. That I used to perfume the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam when he was in ihram and when he was out of ihram. فروى هذه الرواية بعينها الليث ibn Sa'd. In this specific riwayah, this specific narration was narrated by Layth ibn Sa'd, وداود العطار, and Dawud al-Attar, وحميد ibn al-Aswad, ووهيب ibn Khalid, وأبو سامة عن هشام قال أخبرني عثمان ibn Urwa. So over here he says that Hisham, right? So you have all of these scholars, they're narrating عن هشام قال أخبرني عثمان ibn Urwa عن Urwa. So there is a intermediary. There's an intermediary here. عن عائشة عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. وروى هشام عن أبيه عن عائشة رضي الله عنها قال كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا اعتكف يدني إلي رأسه فأرجله وأنا حائض. That when the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم was making i'tikaf, he would put his head inside the window, and she رضي الله عنها would comb his hair. فرواها بعينها مالك بن أنس عن الزهري عن عروة عن عمرة عن عائشة عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. And we have other narrations, we have other asanid, and we have other chains that say that Zuhri narrates on the authority of Urwa, on the authority of Amra and Aisha, meaning here we have removed the father all together. ورواها الزهري وصالح ابن أبي حسان عن أبي سلمة عن عائشة رضي الله عنها كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقبل وهو صائم. That here, this narration says that he صلى الله عليه وسلم, he would kiss his wives while he was fasting صلى الله عليه وسلم. فقال يحيى بن أبي كثير في هذا الخبر في القبلة أخبرني أبو سلمة بن عبد الرحمن أن عمر بن عبد العزيز أخبره أن عروة أخبره أن عائشة أخبرته أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يقبلها وهو صائم. So over here you have a very similar chain of narration, but instead of using an, they are using sigar tahdith, or a very clear way of that they heard from one another. وروى ابن عيينة وغيره عن عمر بن دينار عن جابر. Over here, so you have a narration of Ibn Uyayna and other than him narrating on the authority of Amr ibn Dinar, on the authority of Jabir رضي الله عنه. قال أطعمنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لحوم الخيل ونهانا عن لحوم الحمر. That the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم he fed us, or he gave to us the لحوم الخيل, the meat of a horse, ونهى عن لحوم الحمر, but he forbade us from the meat of donkeys. فرواه حماد بن زيد عن عمر عن محمد بن علي عن جابر عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So over here we have a different chain of narration, and between Amr and Jabir we have Muhammad ibn Ali. So over here there's a different chain when you have an intermediary in the middle. وهذا النحو في الروايات كثير يكثر تعداده وفيما ذكرنا منها كفاية لذوي الفهم. So he said, but the number of examples that we have given here, they're enough for those individuals who understand. What is the point that he's trying to make here? That what you're claiming is no, what you're claiming is possible, right? What you're claiming is possible, and he said that this is something that the muhaddithin used to do, right? Sometimes they would cut out the intermediary. That sometimes they would cut out the intermediary. But if I wanted to know who the intermediary was, what would I do? I would look at other riwayat, and I would go look at other chains. فإذا كانت العلة عند من وصفنا قوله من قبل في فساد الحديث وتوهينه إذا لم يعلم أن الراوي قد سمع ممن روى عنه شيئا إمكان الإرسال فيه لزمه ترك الاحتجاج في قياد قوله برواية من يعلم أنه قد سمع ممن روى عنه إلا في نفس الخبر الذي فيه ذكر السماع. So over here he's basically saying that if this is the case, if we have a hadith that talk and show us and tell us about these other chains, and it's still possible that these individuals met, is it necessary every single time to know and recognize who the intermediary is? No. Why? Because both of the narrators are thiqah. And this is an important point that he's trying to make here. فإذا كانت العلة عند من وصفنا قوله من قبل في فساد الحديث, and if this is the case, if you're saying that this is a defect, then if this would actually ruin the hadith science. This would actually ruin the hadith science, and it would weaken it, unless you knew every single time who the intermediary was. Or you have to establish that these two individuals actually had to have met. لما بينا من قبل أن الأئمة الذين نقلوا الأخبار أنهم كانت لهم تارات يرسلون فيها الحديث إرسال. That sometimes that the great scholars of hadith, they used to do this. It was very normal. So Imam Muslim, he's saying that this is something that was what? It was common. It was something that was common. It was something that was normal. ولا يذكرون من سمعوه منه. And sometimes they didn't mention who this intermediary was. وتارات ينشطون فيها. And sometimes they would mention them. فيسندون الخبر على هيئته ما سمعوا, and sometimes they would mention it the way that they actually heard it. فيجيزون بالنزول فيه إن نزلوا وبالصعود إن صعدوا كما شرحنا ذلك عنهم. And sometimes they would bring the longer chain, and sometimes they would bring a shorter chain. وما علمنا أحدا من أئمة السلف ممن يستعمل الأخبار ويتفقد صحة الأسانيد وسقمها مثل أيوب السختياني وابن عون ومالك وابن أنس وشعبة بن الحجاج ويحيى بن سعيد القطان وعبد الرحمن بن مهدي ومن بعدهم من أهل الحديث. فتشوا أن موضع السماء في الأسانيد كما ادعاه الذي وصفنا قوله من قبل. So over here he lists off all of these scholars. Who does he say? He mentions Ayyub al-Sakhtiyani. He mentions Ibn Awn. He mentions Malik ibn Anas. He mentions Shu'bah ibn Hajjaj. He mentions Yahya ibn Sa'id. He mentions Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan wa Abd al-Rahman ibn Mahdi. He said all of these great scholars of hadith, all they did was deal with a hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And he said you don't have a single one of them. Not a single one of them. And he's saying that these are the most stringent. These were the harshest. These were the biggest critics of hadith. And you don't have a single one of them saying that we need to prove what? That these two people met. وإنما كان تفقد من تفقد منهم سماع رواة الحديث ممن روى عنهم إذا كان الراوي ممن عرف بالتدليس. So over here, this is a very important point. So now we're going to get into another discussion. So وإنما كان تفقد منهم سماع رواة الحديث ممن روى عنهم إذا كان الراوي ممن عرف بالتدليس بالحديث وشهر به فحينئذ يبحثون عن سماعه في روايته ويتفقدون ذلك منه كي تنزح عنهم علة التدليس. So over here he's saying that this only becomes an issue. This only becomes an issue if the narrator is known as a mudallis, if he does tadlis. Tadlis is somebody who intentionally removes the intermediary. So tadlis is when a narrator, he narrates from someone, but he heard it from someone else, and he intentionally what? Removes that narrator. He said, this kind of person he presents an actual problem. Because before, who did he say? If you have two people and both of them are what? Both of them are thiqah. But over here he's saying that there's an exception to this rule. That this exception, when does it apply? When he's known for tadlis. When he's known for tadlis, when he's known for purposely omitting this intermediary. فمن ابتغى ذلك من غير مدلس على الوجه الذي زعم أن حكينا قوله فما سمعنا ذلك عن أحد ممن سمينا ولم نسمي من الأئمة. So over here he's saying that this is an agreed upon principle, that the only time that these imams had an issue, the only time that these imams had a problem is if the narrator was actually a mudallis, if this person actually purposely removed the intermediaries in order to hide them. فمن ذلك أن عبد الله بن يزيد الأنصاري وقد رأى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قد روى عن حذيفة وعن مسعود الأنصاري وعن كل واحد منهما حديثا يسند إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وليس في روايته عنهما ذكر السماع منهما ولا حفظنا في شيء من روايات أن عبد الله بن يزيد شافه حذيفة وأبا مسعود بحديث قد ولا وجدنا ذكر رؤيته إياهما من روايته بعينها. So over here he's giving the example of Abdullah ibn Yazid al-Ansari. He's saying that this individual, he narrates on Hudayfa and he narrates on Abi Mas'ud, but we don't have any proof that he actually met any of these individuals. وَلَمْ نَسْمَعْ عَنْ أَحَدٍ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْعِلْمِ مِمَّنْ مَضَى وَلَا مِمَّنْ أَدْرَكْنَا, and we haven't heard from any of the people of scholars, from those who have met and those we have heard from, أنه طعن في هذين الخبرين اللذين رواهما عبد الله بن يزيد عن حذيفة وأبي مسعود بالضعف. So he said, we don't have any proof that these individuals actually met, but no scholar of hadith has said that these narrations are what? Are weak. بل هما وما أشبههما عند من لاقينا من أهل العلم بالحديث من صحاح الأسانيد وقويها يرون استعمال ما نقل بها والاحتجاج بما أتت من سنن وآثار. He said the opposite is actually true. That the scholars of hadith, they said that this is a hujjah, that this is a proof. Why? Because going back to what we had said, as long as the two narrators are trustworthy and they are not what? They're not mudallis. They don't purposely leave out the intermediaries. وهي في زعم من حكينا قوله من قبل واحدة مهملة حتى يصيب سماع الراوي عمن روى أوله ذهبنا نعدد الأخبار الصحاح عند أهل العلم ممن يهن بزعم هذا القائل ونحصيها لعجزنا عن تقصي ذكرها وإحصائها كلها. He says that if we use this principle, right, if we decided to fall into and use this principle where you have to prove that every single narrator actually met each other, he said you would lose so many hadith. You would lose so many hadith, and the number of hadith that the scholars have actually said were sahih, had said were sound, he said I can't even count them. Right? I can't even count the number of hadith that are sahih. It's not possible to gather all of them. ولكن أحببنا أن ننصب منها عددا يكون سمة لما سكتنا عنه منها. He said, but still, I'll mention a few examples to prove the point that I'm trying to make. وهذا, and from them, وهذا أبو عثمان النهدي. So you have Abu Uthman al-Nahdi وأبو رافع الصائغ وهما ممن أدرك الجاهلية وصاحب أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من البدريين هلم جرا. So you have these two companions, Abu Uthman al-Nahdi وأبو رافع الصائغ. Both of them are from the companions of Badr. I mean, they were very early companions that not only were they Badri companions, but they were present even during Jahiliyyah. So before the Prophet ﷺ actually received prophethood, these individuals were living. ونقل عنهما الأخبار حتى نزال إلى مثل أبي هريرة وابن عمر وذويهما قد أسند كل واحد منهما عن أبي بن كعب عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حديثا ولم نسمع في رواية بعينها أنهما عاينا أبيا أو سمع منه شيء. So over here he's saying that you have two companions. He's giving the example of two companions. He's giving the examples of Abu Huraira and Ibn Umar. And he's saying, who did they not meet? There's a companion that they didn't meet, but they still have narrations from him. Ubay. They have narrations from Ubay. And we have a very, very famous example of this. Like, so for example, in the beginning of the Imam Bukhari Sahih in Badr al-Wahi, who tells us about the beginning of Wahi? Aisha. Was Aisha there? She wasn't even born. Right? Depending on the opinion you follow. But we'll say she wasn't there for sure. Right? This is agreed upon, that she wasn't there. So how is it that she narrates on it? Obviously she heard it from another companion. وأسند أبو عمر الشيباني وهو ممن أدرك الجاهلية وكان في زمن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم رجلا وأبو معمر عبد الله بن شخبر كل واحد منهما عن أبي مسعود الأنصاري عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم خبرين. So over here you have two old companions. You have two old companions and a younger companion narrating on both of them. So you have a younger companion narrating on both of on these two older companions, and it is something that is accepted. وأسند عبيد بن عمير أن سلمة زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حديثا. وعبيد بن عمير ولد في زمن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So he's saying that the chances of him having met with Salama are very small. وأسند قيس بن أبي حازم وقد أدرك زمن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن أبي مسعود الأنصاري عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ثلاثة أخبار. So over here, Qais ibn Abi Hazim, again, the chances of him having actually met are very small. وأسند عبد الرحمن بن أبي ليلى وقد حفظ عن عمر بن خطاب وصاحب عليا عن أنس بن مالك عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حديثا. So over here, again, the break in the time frames between them is a thing that he's pointing out. وأسند ربعي ابن حراش عن عمران بن حسين عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حديثين وعن أبي بكر عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حديثا وقد سمع ربعي من علي بن أبي طالب رواه عنه. وأسند نافع بن جبير بن مطعم عن أبي شريح الخزاعي عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حديثا. وأسند نعمان بن عياش عن أبي سعيد الخدري ثلاثة أحاديث عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So over here he's just talking about the number of hadith that are actually narrated, but how there's a break in time between them. وأسند عطاء بن يزيد الليثي عن تميم الداري عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حديثا. وأسند سليمان بن يسار عن رافع بن خديج عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حديثا. So again, you have every single one of these. You have every single one of these individuals and how there's a break in time between them. وأسند حميد بن عبد الرحمن الحميري عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حديث. فكل هؤلاء التابعين الذين نصبنا روايتهم عن الصحابة الذين سميناهم لم يحفظ عنه سماع علمناه منهم في رواية بعينها ولا أنهم لقوه في نفس خبر بعينه. So over here he's saying that all of these tabi'een, all of these students of the companions, it is not established that they heard or they met these specific companions. And it's not specific that they heard this particular narration from that companion, but they still had this practice. وهي أسانيد عند ذوي المعرفة في الأخبار والروايات من صحاح الأسانيد. And they're considered the most correct chains. And they're considered the most upright chains. لا نعلمهم وهنوا منها شيئا قط ولا والتمسوا فيها سماع بعضهم من بعض. And you don't find any of them trying to establish the fact that these individuals actually met. إذ السماع لكل واحد منهم ممكن من صاحبه غير مستنكر. So if it is possible that they met, and it's not something that it's a stretch or it's not something that's far-fetched, لكونهم جميعا كانوا في العصر الذي اتفقوا فيه, because that they were contemporaries and it is possible that they lived in the same time period. وكان هذا القول الذي أحدثه القائل الذي حكيناه في توهين الحديث بالعلة التي وصفها أقل من أن يعرج عليه ويثار ذكره. So he's saying that this person who's making this claim, he's not even worth mentioning, but I had to respond to some of the claims that he had made. But the Muqaddimah, I know that we've been going through it for a few weeks. How much time has he spent on it so far? He spent quite a bit of time. on this. And this is a mas'ala, or this is an issue that is very important to him, rahimahullah. إذ كان قولا محدثا وكلاما خلفا لم يقله أحد من أهل العلم سلف. He says that this is a innovatory new statement that no one has proceeded in. ويستنكرهم من بعدهم خلف فلا حاجة بناء في رده بأكثر مما شرحنا. And it is something that should be rejected, and the amount that I have refuted, it is enough. إذ كان قدر المقالة وقائلها القدر الذي وصفنا والله المستعان على دفع ما خالف مذهب العلماء وعليه تكلان. He says that what I have said is enough, and this is enough for me, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his aid, and in him is all success, that in order to help me refute this false madhab. So now we have to go back to a very important issue, and that is the issue of Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari, right? So there are a number of things that I do want to discuss, and there are a number of things, a number of proofs that that my Shaykh Hatim al-Oni, he actually put together, proving that this was not a condition for Imam Muslim. And we'll go through them, inshallah. Bukhari. So, who was the first one to actually make this opinion popular? It was Qadi Iyad. So Qadi Iyad is the first person to actually make this opinion popular, that he ishtarat al-liqa. Then this opinion was taken by Ibn Rushayd al-Sibti, and then after him it was taken by Ibn Rajab. Also, Imam al-Ala'i, he took this opinion as well. So you have these four major scholars of hadith who take these opinions, who took this opinion, and they are the ones who made it very popular. Qadi Iyad, and Qadi Iyad was 544, and then you have Ibn Rushayd al-Sibti, this was 721, and then Ba'dahu Ibn Rajab. So Ibn Rajab was 795. And then Imam al-Ala'i, he also took this opinion, 761. So in his muqaddimah, what we had gone through with Imam Muslim, what did he say? He says that as long as they are thiqa, and as long as they are contemporaries, and they cannot be mudallis, right? They cannot be mudallis, they cannot be from those people who actively try to remove that intermediary. So here, it's much easier to prove that two people didn't meet versus proving that they did. Does that mean, are you guys following me?
Here prove they did.
Right. It's more difficult to prove that they met. It is easier, right? Because if I have, remember, now think of these conditions. The idea behind this is that, okay, if you have two thiqa narrators, and they're saying an, then we take the hadith. Like, you're adding a condition now, saying that you have to prove that they met. You have to actually prove that they met. So, Imam Bukhari himself, he says outside of the Sahih, I'm going to give you guys a few examples. And there are actually a number of them. I'm actually summarize some of the examples here. So you have Ibrahim, he's an early narrator. This is Imam Bukhari. He says, Ibrahim is an early narrator, and I do not know if Abdullah ibn Muhammad ibn Aqil heard from him or not.
In his book.
Now, this is not in his Sahih, this is outside of Sahih, this is in his day. Another example. I do not know Muhammad ibn Aban, he's a tabi'i, having heard from Aisha. And he uses it. So after mentioning Abdullah ibn Nafi ibn Umayyah on the authority of Rabi'a ibn Harith, on the authority of Fadl ibn Abbas, he then says, I do not know if they heard from one another or not. Imam al-Tahawi says that they were not contemporaries, and says that it is impossible that they could have met. So what? So over here the condition was what? The condition was the possibility, or the condition was that they be contemporaries, not to prove that they actually met. There are more examples. So the Imam Muslim, what does he say about this issue? He says that as long, if they're using, like min turuq at-tahammul an, right, from the ways that a hadith can be carried from one person to another, is using on the authority of. So he says that this is valid. He says if they lived in the same time period, this is valid. If both of them are thiqa, good. They're not mudallis. the hadith is then what? Accepted. It is sahih. So there are a few things that are important to that. Number one, his status as an imam. He showed his sahih. He showed his sahih to who? To Abu Zur'a al-Razi and Muhammad al-Muslim ibn al-Waqi. And what did they say? There was a few hadith that they pointed out, and he removed them. Yeah, but there's a few. It wasn't too many. In general, there was. In part of his sahih was what? The muqaddimah. And as we read through the muqaddimah, when did he write it? Did he write it before or after? He wrote it before. So when he presented the book, along with it was what? The muqaddimah. I want you guys to think about that. So like we said, and another point that we had made in the beginning, he finished compiling his Sahih by 250, the same year he met Imam Bukhari. He had another 11 years to change, to make major changes. He had another 11 years to change his wording, to change his muqaddimah. Did he change it? Do we have any other nusakh that remove this? No, we don't. And we had said, out of all the issues that Imam Muslim discussed, he spends a lot of time on this one. So he feels very, very strongly about it. He mentions other scholars. He doesn't just say there's a ijma' on this issue and this is something muttafaq alayh. He actually goes and what? He brings them and he lists every single one of these scholars. And like we said, Bukhari was a shaykh. Bukhari was a shaykh. It's not possible that he didn't know about his shaykh's extra condition. And if that was his condition, is it possible that he was ignorant of it? That he didn't know? He studied with him for 5 years. Is it possible that he didn't know what Imam Bukhari's condition was? No, it's not possible. The other proof is, how does Imam Muslim describe the opponent? He says that he is jahil, mukhtari', foolish, kha'in, right? You know, he uses all of these terms. Imam Bukhari, was he respected even before he came to Naysabur? Yeah, he was respected, right? Even from his enemies, he was respected. Would jahl be a term that would be used? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And not just that, usually there are two scholars that are paired together when it comes to this issue of, you know, they made liqa a shart, is Imam Bukhari and Ali Madini. Does it even make sense that he would speak about these two scholars in this way? No, absolutely not. So, from the time of Imam Muslim, he has written his muqaddimah. It's something that's well known. Nobody else speaks on this issue until Qadi. No one. There are books that are written between Muslim's time and Qadi Iyad's time that actually talk about the manhaj and kutub as sunnah. None of them mention this as a condition. I'm going to read you guys some statements. Abu Walid al-Tayalisi, he died 227. So Ibn Rajab, he actually quotes Imam Hakim as saying, I read in Muhammad ibn Yahya's handwriting that he asked Abu Walid, did Shu'bah differentiate between akhbarani and an? Did he differentiate between he informed me and on the authority of, or authority of? He said, I've met many scholars and they did not differentiate between them. Al-Hakim al-Naysaburi, he is considered from the last of the muhaddithin. He died 405. He says in his Ma'rif to Ulum al-Hadith, recognizing hadith that are narrated with an, on the authority of, that are not narrated by those who practice tadlis, are muttasil. He says that hadith that are used on the authority of, by those who hide intermediaries, they are considered connected. So as long, if you're using an, and the narrator is not mudallis, then the hadith are considered by agreement of the scholars of narration. Avoiding narrators that practice the different types of tadlis. Abu Amr al-Dani, he died 444. He says in his Bayan al-Mursal wal-Mawquf wal-Muqatti', as what is relayed to us by means of an, on the authority of, then they are connected by consensus, by ijma'. As long it is known that the two narrators were what? That they're contemporaries. Yani thiqa and contemporaries, meaning that they lived in the same time. And not from those who are what? Mudallisin. Do you guys see a pattern here? Even if their meeting wasn't established. Imam al-Bayhaqi, He says in Ma'arif al-Sunnah wal-Athar about Tahawi and how he declares a hadith weak because their meeting was not established. So Imam al-Tahawi, there's a hadith where he says that this hadith is weak because we don't know that these two met. So Bayhaqi answers, he says, as long as Qais ibn Sa'ad is thiqa, he is reliable, and who is narrating from him is also reliable, and he narrates on a sheikh due to their age and the possibility of meeting, and not someone who is, it was not mudallis. Again, you see a pattern here. Hides their intermediaries in their narrations, then this is a what type of narration? Accepted. Ibn Abdul Barq, dies 463. Know that I have thought over the statements of different imams of hadith in those books that made sihha, authenticity, a condition, and those that haven't, and found all of them except the chain that has on the authority of, without any differing between them, as long as three conditions are fulfilled. What are they? Thiqa, good. Contemporaries, and not mudallis. Ahsant. So some might argue, his second point, he says that narrators are trustworthy, they have met and sat with each other, and they're not from those who hide their intermediaries in their narration. So the second point, some people could argue. The second point of his, some people could argue, okay, well, aren't you establishing that they met? He's saying, but he says before in the beginning that on this issue there is what? Ijma'. So it's not possible that that's what he meant. Because this idea, this condition of actually proving that people met, it didn't come until later. Ibn Hazm, he says in Al-Ihkam fi Usul Al-Ahkam, if we know that a thiqa is a contemporary, mu'asir, is a trustworthy narrator, is contemporary to who he is narrating from, the meaning and hearing is understood. This is because once we know he is trustworthy, we accept. And acceptance is the opposite of lying. Lying is attributing a chain to another that he did not hear from unless there is a proof to show otherwise. Whether he says it was read to us, akhbarana, or it was read to the shaykh, haddathana, or haddathana, akhbarana, or on the authority of so-and-so, yani an fulan, or so-and-so said, qala fulan. All of this is understood that he heard from them. He doesn't differentiate between these ones. If we find that one of the narrators allowed hiding intermediary narrators, yani that one of the narrators, if we find that one of the narrators is a mudallis, he would lose his trustworthy status and he would be labeled a mudallis. As for the one that was ruled to be trustworthy and his trustworthiness is established, then he is considered pious and truthful, not on sinning, accusations of lying, or having ill thoughts about our sacred texts. And it is permitted to differ over him. So even if he's thiqa, we can still differ over him. There is no difference in this issue from any Muslim. Not a single Muslim differs on this issue. And for the opposing opinions, then they are subsidiary issues. And meaning that if people do differ, it's on far'i issues, it's not on this issue specifically. Because this is something that is agreed upon. So there are three books that write about the conditions of Imam Bukhari. From them is Kitab ibn Manda, he dies 395, Muhammad ibn Tahir al-Maqdisi, he dies 507, and Abu Bakr al-Hazmi, he dies in 584. None of them mention this issue, this condition of liqa. Not a single one. Ibn Tahir, he mentions this, he says this, in his introduction to Al-Jam' Bayn al-Rijal al-Sahihain, that every hadith that these two authors narrate in their respective books, even if some critique them, is a standalone proof just because they narrated. They did not narrate except for reliable, trustworthy, precise narrators, taking into account their ages, when they were born, and who they heard from their predecessors, and so on and so forth until the chain reaches a famous companion. Did he differentiate between Bukhari and Muslim? No. He says this is the condition for both. Imam Shafi'i, he says in his Risala, it is said, how is it that you accept from one that is possible that he'll hide the intermediary? And it's possible that he didn't actually hear from him. I say to him, now this is Imam Shafi'i speaking, trustworthy Muslims correct themselves in their affairs. And when they say on the authority of, they are saying themselves and calling what they are saying is authentic. And meaning that if a person is truthful, what he's saying is also truthful. We accept this until we are proven otherwise. Beware of those actions and from them that would cause them to go against what they are obligated to do, yani that we see them falling into haram or other things. We did not know of tadlis in our lands. Now this is Imam Shafi'i speaking. We didn't know of tadlis. Like this hiding intermediaries, it's something that is foreign to, it's something that's foreign to us. Not from those we have met, nor from those that have passed. So from my time and the people before, this is not something that we did. Except as of late. So this is a new phenomenon that we're finding. From them are those that accept it, but had they left it, it would have been better for them. But is he saying that it's categorically wrong? No. He's saying it is better. A man would say, I heard so-and-so say, I heard so-and-so, and I heard so-and-so on the authority of so-and-so. Yani, sami'tu and an. So both of these are ways to transmit. And these would be considered equal. One would not narrate from another except that he had met him, and whoever took this path, we accepted from him. I heard so-and-so on the authority of so-and-so. Yani, an. Fulan, an, fulan. Abu Bakr al-Humaydi, he died 219. He says, even if every narrator in the chain did not say, I heard, or it was narrated to us at every level of the chain until it reached the Prophet ﷺ, even if it is possible that between each narrator and what is being said is one or more people, then all of this is built upon meeting one another until it reaches the Prophet ﷺ. Absolutely sound. Something we must accept from those that have carried it to us, as long as he is truthful and a contemporary to who he is narrating from. Now, Abu Bakr al-Humaydi, he's very famous for his Jama' Baina Sahihain. So he was very well versed in both Bukhari and in Muslim. And he goes on to say, I say, even if the one connecting the chain does not say, I heard, until it reaches the Prophet ﷺ, then it is taken as if he met and was a contemporary until proven otherwise. He said, even if you don't have anywhere in the chain, if you just have an, he said it's okay. To me, it's still considered connected. Tfaddal. To invalidate, there's only we had talked about the situations, right? So there are some things that go on, and that is more of a discussion of when tadlis happens. So if you have a narrator that is constantly doing an, then his narrations can be doubted. But if you have those who do it sometimes, it was something that was considered normal for the muhaddithin. It wasn't something that was considered strange. Hold on.
What if Imam Bukhari, he didn't require as a shart for Sahih hadith, but the shart because he's a genius.
Sure. So is it possible that he made it a condition on himself, not a condition for Sahih? This is what you're saying.
Yeah, not even.
Yeah.
Not himself, but as a default, he did that because he's like a genius. It's like subtle, so subtle.
I would agree with you. The problem is there are examples that are against that in his Sahih. In his Sahih. Yes. No. Like they're muttasila. Ahadith muttasila. They're not from his mu'allaqat. Yani from min asl Sahih. No. I mean, most of them you have this. I'm saying and it's not something that's uncommon. You know what I mean? It's not like our entire hadith encyclopedia is full of mu'annath. It's not. The only problem is that you're adding this condition. Did Imam Bukhari say this was his condition? No, he didn't. Right? This is something like we said. The first person to actually state it was Qadi Iyad. We don't have any of his students saying it, and all of the people who wrote on the manhaj of Imam Bukhari, and why he put his book together, they didn't even differentiate between Bukhari and Muslim and how they organized that.
Most of the mosques use Bukhari.
Yeah.
I think that is a book that has been validated for intensity, or I have to validate every hadith.
So Imam Nawawi, the purpose of why he put that book together was very different than why Imam Muslim put his book together. So when we look at Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari, their goal was to bring everything that was Sahih, right? Riyadh al-Salihin, his goal is to do what? Is to purify the soul. So did he make it a condition that every hadith be Sahih in his book? No, not necessarily. And not just that, if you have some hadith that are not as strong but the meaning is good, can you use them? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. As long as it doesn't what? Go against the Sharia. It doesn't go against the Sunnah.
I have a question, right? So we say that in terms of methodology, there's not much difference in that specific. Then why do we do tafdeel of Bukhari and some people do tafdeel of Muslim?
Yeah.
What are we doing that? Or is it our ijtihad?
So Bukhari, asah, why? Because his knowledge of ilal, his knowledge of hidden defects was greater than Imam Muslim. And even Imam Muslim himself, he admits it. He admits it. When he met Imam Bukhari, he was like this is an Imam. Like I have not met anyone like him. I have not met anyone like him. So why? If we have that admittance from Imam Muslim himself and the contemporaries, right? There's no one who doesn't talk about how great Imam Bukhari is. So just based on his knowledge, that was enough for them to say that no, he has a greater makana, he has a greater position, and not just that, the hadith that are actually like critiqued, the hadith that are actually critiqued, are they more in Muslim or in Bukhari? No, they're more in Muslim. They're more Muslim. So I think these two reasons, like Imam Muslim admitting himself, the number of critiqued hadith, these two are better, I feel, qualifications on why Bukhari has a higher status than Muslim Sahih.
So when you said it was already a practice, or they're saying it was a practice of man, already about sometimes skipping over a narrator. Do you mean like the Rawis in the chain, or like the muhaddith, like who's the
No, the Rawi in the chain.
That, okay.
Yeah, the Rawi in the chain. The one who recorded it, he's just recording how he received it. Yeah. He records how he receives it. There's actually a lot more proofs that we can go through. I'll share this last statement, inshallah, and then we'll continue from. The next one's really good. Continue? Okay. So he says in his, you have Abu Hassan al-Qabisi, he died 403. He says in his Mulaqas, a clearly connected chain is one where it is said, he narrated to us, right? Hadathana, he informed us, akhbarana, we were told, anba'ana, we heard as it was read to him, right? Sami'na, or the different turuq al-tahammul, then these are all connected without issue. Similarly, those narrations where it is said an. Similarly, those narrations where it is said on the authority of, then it is connected if it is known that the narrators were what? Contemporaries and thiqah. If they were clear contemporaries and those they were narrating from, and not known for not lying, tadlis. They were not known for hiding intermediaries. Like this next one is good. So Sahih Bukhari itself is a proof. Sahih Bukhari itself is a proof that he didn't put this condition. Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar, he dies 852, and he has one of the most famous explanations of Bukhari, so he's very, very familiar with Bukhari. It's okay. So he was very familiar with Bukhari. It's only you guys anyway, you can hear me. He was very familiar with Bukhari. He says the issue of critiquing hadith due to disconnected chains and not having that which connects them, then this is rare.
Repeat that again.
The issue of critiquing hadith due to disconnected chains, right? Because he was from the people who said that what? That he ishtarat al-liqa. Ibn Hajar, he was from those scholars who said that Imam Bukhari made it a condition that they actually had to admit. So he's saying the issue of critiquing hadith due to disconnected chains and not having that which connects them, then this is rare. Saying what? That it? If you're saying it's rare, what does that mean? It happens. It's possible. No, not it is possible. It happens. It's possible. And we'll talk more about this next week, inshallah. But this is a very, very strong point. This is a very strong point. But he says when it comes to the issue, like when you critique hadith, one of the ways you critique hadith is saying that in this chain there's a break. Yeah, it's a break. And one of the ways that a break is defined, according to his madhab, is using an. But even he himself has to admit what? That it happens. But how like even though it's rare, there's a few cases, but it still happens. And where is it? In Imam Bukhari's Sahih.
That's where the missing ring is.
What?
The missing ring of
No.
link.
The missing link. Khalas, inshallah. But I'll get into more of a discussion of this inshallah next time. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqi nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Any questions before we end?
So the three, right? The field about 5, right? So does that sometimes then have you omit? Is there somebody who omits somebody? Is there possible?
No.
It
It is possible that someone's dropped, but as long as the two narrators are thiqa, even if the person is dropped, we assume what? That he's truthful, right? You assume that he's truthful in whatever it is he is narrating. Because are we always concerned with the intermediaries?
No.
Not always. Why? Because we know that they are thiqat.
So there's the thought regardless.
Have somebody waiting for you.
وصلى الله على خير خلق نبينا
So
محمد
what
وعلى
about
آله وصحبه.
Hassan al-Basri? Unless you bring the proof against him.
But you know, no, this is a really good question. So he says, okay, what about Hassan al-Basri? So he does. But the problem, why is Hassan al-Basri a problem? Why does he not fit our example?
Because he's a mudallis.
Because he's mudallis.
Yeah. So what about Qatada?
Bro, what are you saying, bro?
What about Qatada and Anas?
What does hadith translate? Perjury or?
No, perjury is different. Yeah.
We'll answer that question next week.
Inshallah.
I wanted to ask about Hassan.